Oh, haven't seen you in a while.
Hey everybody, Anthropomorphic Nerd here today, and yes, I am very sorry. It's been at least 3-4 weeks, it's been about a month, and, the reason why I haven't been able to make any videos is basically school. School's been taking up a lot of my time, and I've never been really free to make any video, and there's been so much crazy stuff coming out in the past, month or so, and I now have to play catch up to basically everything, which now that it's spring break, I'm capable of doing, which is why I'm here right now. So that's basically the gist of why I have not been able to do any reactions or any videos or anything like that. And sorry, sometimes I can't speak. I am very sorry about that, and that's just, yeah, I can't really do anything about that. It's I value school over YouTube a little bit more, so so yeah, I definitely can't change that. But I'm back now, and that I'm here now, I'm capable of making some more reactions that I really have to catch up on. For a while now, MatPat, I've been keeping up with him. He's been saying he's gonna release the timeline, which he did a month ago when he released the first segment of it, which I didn't know it was going to be in segments. I thought it was just going to be like one big episode, but it wasn't. But that's basically what this is going to be. So, thumbnail time. This episode is Anthropomorphic Nerd's super mega big Fnaf lore timeline all in one, because he's been so late that he's got to do the whole thing. And I wanted this to just be 2 episodes, but the fact that there might be less shock of the lore because I've already heard most of all of it, and you saw I was reading a book, and I know I know what I need to know for this, but at least, like, I was planning on doing this today, and like 6 minutes ago, pretty much 6 minutes ago, MatPat released another episode that continued on to the timeline, and I'm looking at it like, what? How? Like, I haven't watched the other 2, but still, I'm like, three like 20-minute episodes, and just like my brain was trying to comprehend what was going on, and I just couldn't. So yeah, I'm very sorry about being late, but I'm gonna get into watching all 3 of these videos right now. Really wanted to watch the Fnaf musical that was made like 6 years ago by Random Encounters, but you know, I'll watch that some other day. I've never actually seen that before. I've seen bits and pieces, but I never watched the whole thing. Like from episode 1 to 6, whatever. Is there anything else I need to say? Oh, final thing. Just because this episode is super long, and I know probably a decent amount of people are gonna watch it, I'm gonna make sure, because this is like when I get most of my views from anyway, is a FNAF reviews or anything. So I'm basically going to be splitting it up so that there's going to be, I'm hoping there's going to be timestamps with the way I can do this. Sorry I'm talking for so long, but this is necessary to say. I'm going to split up into timestamps. I'm going to have in the description down below, if the timestamps don't work for whatever reason, you'll be able to skip to whatever episode you want to watch just for your convenience. So, that being said, as always, I'm Anthropomorphic Nerd, and the video is not over yet. So, we're going to be starting this off in... Alright, I'll skip past that. So, 3, 2, 1, get that thumbs up icon. 4 months ago, 1 month ago, not 4, 362k likes. Let's do this. Now, Game Theory FNAF The Ultimate Timeline, Part 1. I wish they actually had these in parts, but it's the latest ones, whatever. 4 minutes of me talking, I'm sorry. There's also gonna be something in the description to skip all of this, for your convenience. 3, 2, 1... play.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games, 8 whole years, all leading to this moment. The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together.
I'm all in for it.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to
Game Theory.
The show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past
8 years.
decade of my life.
Oh,
this one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kinda nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child.
That was almost a spit
Afton
take.
coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3
You can buy
more
that at
massive
Walmart.
smart, you know.
games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is
Cannot
why I'm
wait
here
for
today.
the FNAF movie.
Lore at this point is complicated.
Even if all my friends
It
make
is
fun
full
of it.
speculation and theory. So to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to
Give me that
reveal my
juicy
current
lore,
working FNAF
that
timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this
Insight.
timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man,
Sorry,
William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to
I thought I
becoming
had a tape
co-owner of one of the
measure.
most successful restaurant franchises
I
in
was
the
gonna go
world,
like-
and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation
Oh.
of Freddy's, how the business started.
Oh,
and how it came
yay.
to be.
Okay, so yeah, I was right. It's just 3 episodes. 3. This is the whole deal. The whole shebang. The shalumbo. The scalaroosh. Has anybody ever said that before? I'm counting that.
The Afton era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF.
The
Everything that
future.
happens after the pizzeria simulator
past,
fire.
present,
and because there
future.
are lots of new big
Not really.
revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of nowhere, as well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate
me.
1 episode to each chunk. I
Yes!
originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete.
Oh my god, okay. Forget everything I said at the beginning. I didn't make a mistake. This was my plan all along. You can't think that I didn't plan this. I meant to do this. All of it, yes. From the very beginning. All of it. I wanted to make it a whole mega episode like I wanted to do with Hell of a Boss. And I did it. I did it. No. I planned this.
Without some sort of explanation at the
Call
end
it
of
a
each
happy
one. Once this
accident.
whole thing's done, I promise I'm gonna merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now,
well,
this just felt like the best,
too
most
late.
satisfying, most complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails.
Honestly, you should probably know I'm probably going to watch the super long one too, just in case he says something that he didn't mention. But if it is the exact same thing, just stapled back to back, then I'm not gonna post it.
Video titles, books, and any other
'Cause there's no
citations
point.
that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn, or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that
Sorry, I
you're going
hit
to come
the-
back
hit
to
the
a few
mic.
times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Foundation
Our
of
story
Freddy's.
begins not in the 1980s, or even
No.
in the 1970s, but
No,
all
no,
the
no.
way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression, and people were in desperate
people
need of
still
cheap
did the
entertainment,
Charleston.
especially in Utah, one of
That
the
was
state's
not the
hit
Charleston.
hardest, 4th highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits: a simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey,
Sounds
where the tickets
awesome.
would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the Vaughn Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little
William
boy
Afton.
named Billy. That was his nickname,
Billy?
but his parents liked to call him William. William The bear could dance.
'Cause
it
Bill
could sing.
is short for
decades,
William.
William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life.
I was about to
but
say
how?
Henry,
William was
but
smart, without a doubt.
William
He had a keen mind for
knows what
business,
he's
but
doing.
wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another
Golden
friend, a
Freddy.
yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special.
Golden
because that was
Freddy and
his.
Spring
It was an
Bonnie.
original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough, with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what?
but that's
It was
what makes
just
them
enough.
cool.
Bonnie and Fredbear would
And
perform on
creepy.
stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted.
That's
and
why
inspired so many
the
years
rabbit
ago.
has
And things
different colored
could have ended
eyes,
there. That
because
could have been
William's
the end to
in
his
the
story.
suit,
It could
and
have
that's just
been
an
perfect
animatronic.
had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea, and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt
How
the
dare
prideful
they.
William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing
Not
that
the
he
first time
always
someone's
wanted to
took
do,
someone's
make the
idea and make it their
animals
own.
actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic. Magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to
silver
one side of
eyes.
Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one
Honestly,
was
I
more of
could
a joke
grab
for
my
parents,
books
but
on
it
the
was
bookshelf
main
over there
stage
just
that
to,
was
like,
for
show
kids.
them all.
A rocking band of characters
can't see
featuring
it, but
a
it's
yellow
like-
chicken thing with a southern drawl named
It's there.
Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why'd it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fredbear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was
There's honestly nothing worse than someone stealing your idea and making it better. I mean, then it's its own idea, but at the same time, it kind of spites the original creator. Okay. I'm just gonna say it. First of all, the joke, but now I'm just going to say, I in no way plan to profit off of any of the videos I make when they have other people's content in them. Because I feel like that's wrong. Unless I do something to physically make the video not the reaction, not a copy of someone else's work, yeah, I wouldn't feel right doing that. That's a fact.
not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult. Another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now
doesn't
merged
seem
into
like
one,
the
it was best of
forgiving
both
type.
worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature
Like
a mix of
50
humans
years
in
later.
uniform suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton
The
appreciated
OG.
this new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
I am sorry, Gregory.
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre, so they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into
I don't
the
know if I
limelight
would
and
want
win
to
a
buy one of
headliner
those
when
for
out of
like
commission. Others, though,
$200.
would fare much better, like a new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant
It
of the
would be
yellow
creepy.
Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately,
Coming
the franchise
home and
would
you
get
just see-
so big it would spawn its own cartoon show.
Every time you
Fredbear
come
and
home.
Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters.
But the
Chicken
bite of
Chicken Bonnie,
83.
the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy. Mostly.
I don't talk a lot, I'm
It did
trying
bother
to
him that the one original character
reciprocate
that
all
he created, the
this.
one that he himself played,
That is not
Golden
the right
Bonnie,
word.
got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The
Inner
only
thought.
character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter. He had a thriving business, and best of all, he was able to
Had a
learn the craft of
family.
robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters
little
could
love-hate
do. Because it was quick and
relationship.
easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the
I just want to say something. Does anybody ever think that the fact of having 5 fingers is kind of creepy? Like it's something like normal, like because every human, and you see humans all the time, they have 5 fingers. Most creatures have 5 fingers, if not no fingers at all. But like when you see something with 4 fingers, whether it be just like an animatronic or just like any mascot suit, something with 4 fingers, it's like something about it that's like makes you feel I don't know, nostalgic or just like calm, like it's okay. It's not like you look at it and it's like, oh, that's super weird. But then when you look at that and you look at someone with 5 fingers, you're like, ew. I don't get it. That's just something. That's just how I feel. Sorry. Let's continue with the video.
animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but
Sorry,
could
I'm pausing
freely
so
roam
much.
the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his
having
mascot
inner
suits
thoughts.
could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way to an
I'm gonna rule
engineering
the
degree.
world.
And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1
Dun,
of the
dun,
story. That said, at the
dun.
end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro
okay.
poster that was hidden in
That was
Security
just a
Breach, that
summary.
at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that
Pretty cool.
timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without him just being extremely old. Best case scenario,
Right.
if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder
Personally, I
spree
don't care what
begins.
people
It
say
just
about
doesn't
the
make
lore.
a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal
I
until
truly
his first
believe
death in Springtrap.
that-
That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was
that
either
Scott
a family
made it the way it
business that Afton
was,
then carried on to a new generation, or
and then
something
Matt
that
Pat
he saw
made
as
it
a
better.
kid and just wanted to
Improved
recreate when
upon
he grew up. The
the
Fredbear
original
Singin' Show thing
content.
also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of this story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself. There's also a whole separate
original
discussion
character
here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise,
everybody is
only one set
deeply
of characters
connected
have
to
themselves 5
that
fingers,
original
the
character.
Nightmares.
The one that
Golden
they
Freddy,
made
Fredbear was a
themselves.
5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now, I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fredbear. And yet, there are 2 key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And 2, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't.
Why would
you
he
would be
come
stealing
back?
someone else's ideas. So
Is
if
it just
Afton
for the
created
hee hee
Fredbear,
ha
there would
ha?
have to be
Oh,
some
no.
rival franchise.
it
the
never
only
is.
other person who would likely be ripping him off, Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also
always the man
admiration.
upstairs.
As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages: Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing
I
all
never
of this,
would
at
have
one point,
expected
the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchises.
I can't think this deep into
this
something.
also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with 2
That's why I need
rival
Matt
restaurants,
Pat
each with their own casts of characters merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? Few things actually. First,
because that's what it's called in the game.
Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location. So
and
it
Funtime
is out
Chica's in
and doesn't
Fnaf
fit
6.
Anywhere. Second,
The simulator.
Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with a theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it
technically
would make
true.
sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was
I never
added
thought
to the main
Chica
cast of
had
characters,
much of
while
a
all the
southern
other
accent,
mediocres faded
unless
away. It's also
you're
why
talking
when
about
Freddy's closes
Rockstar
after Williams'
Chica,
killing spree, she's the one to branch back
which
off
may
into
or
a
may
early
not be
franchise
southern.
and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also
sexy
explain
Chica.
why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was Henry. Henry's creation, not his. Is all
I
of
mean,
this a
it'd be
big leap?
most-
Yeah. Is it connecting a lot of dots
Chico
that
was
are
the least
very spread out
popular
across
of the
franchise
one.
that I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years? Absolutely. But I think it makes sense.
And I will
It also
hold that.
serves as a
I
clean
feel like
answer
out
to
of
a
the
lot
original
random
4,
threads that
Chica was
Scott's
the
been
least
leaving
popular.
dangling for years.
Probably
So,
'cause
with
she
all of
looks
that
so
in mind,
weird,
my
well,
friends, we can close
withered.
the book on the foundation of Freddy's. And
She has
don't worry,
no
next week I'll
hands.
be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation. Part 2, the Afton era. I promise, it will actually be next week this time. No more waiting around. I am just
was.
as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise.
It was
You know
next
what else I
week.
promise? I promise that we'll actually get to
yeah.
talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the
That's
games
technically
anyway.
true.
Even back in the early days of FNAF, we were decoding images and source code that Scott fed us through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things, now
Analyze.
they're just modern extensions of that. All of it is crucial to understanding this franchise and its lore. Unless, of course, Steel Wool finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
I've always
Ho, ho, ho.
loved to do is get kind of back to. I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back
The
to kind of,
original.
like, the origin of like Fazbear Entertainment or the origin of Freddy
Because we
Fazbear.
have
But in
gone,
the meantime,
we've gone
we'll wait
through
for that
the
inevitable
present,
cryptic game
we've
and hope
seen
that
the
this start to
future.
the timeline helps to fill in some of those gaps. I'm excited to share part 2 with you next week.
We
If you
can
haven't
go to the
subscribed and rang the
past.
bell, make sure you do it now so you're notified when that part drops. I
You
cannot
know
wait
I
to see
am.
your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I remind you,
It's just a theory. It's a theory. Everyone. This is all speculation. Nevertheless, great job, my man. Let's go to the next thing. I see. Okay, so that's first one down. The Rise of Afton has to be the second one because this one came out literally 10 minutes ago. And I like that one. Okay, check to make sure OBS was still recording. And a good 3, a 2 to the 1, and said everything in the video. 3, 2, 1, play. The Afton, the
hello,
one
Internet.
everybody
Welcome
is
to
gonna
Game
flip the
Theory,
lid
and
about,
officially
literally.
Page 7 of the FNAF timeline script. Last
Because
time we covered the
Afton
origins of Freddy.
is-
We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing
That was
bear
supposed to
come
be like
life,
the
and
planet,
the infuriating
like the
moment that his
world, like
dream is
he's-
copied by a rival
he's the
restaurant
man.
franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger
You
of
don't
the
get
two
it.
franchises results in William meeting
get it.
Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton...
Well, honestly, I feel like William Afton's story could make its own amazing movie. And I don't know how much of him is... I don't know how much of... Because he's like a majority of what the FNAF is, but I don't know how much of him is actually going to be like that pushed in the actual FNAF movie. But like, he is like the series. That's kind of why he always comes back. He's like, literally, and I made this inference like when I just bought Metroid Prime for the GameCube a couple days ago, that he is like Ridley. He always comes back because he's such an iconic character. Always comes back. Afton. Plus the fact that Ridley is a big purple space dragon pirate. That's kind of what Afton is. No, it's not at all what he is, but you get the point.
acquaints himself with death, I want you
Why are the captions on for this one? The captions weren't on for the last one.
to take some time to acquaint
Doesn't
yourself
make
with
any
our
sense.
newest channel. Guys, this is a huge moment for us theorists. For the last decade, we've had this 4-player controller icon, and now we finally fill in the final missing piece. Get ready for the rollout of our newest theorist channel. Drumroll, please. Style Theory, where we're looking at the science, math, psychology, history, and mystery of the way you look, your clothing, fashion trends, hygiene, and makeup. Now, I know that theorizing about style might sound weird at first, but hear me out. I grew up not understanding style or fashion at all. Admittedly, I was a bit of a hot mess, blissfully ignorant to the impact that style has over your life.
Yeah,
and
it was
how the
just
world
that
treats
weird
you.
guy.
But over time, by educating myself on the ins and outs of the fashion industry, I was better able to achieve my true self and find my
Sorry,
own
my
sense
dog's
of
barking.
personal style. style. And that right there, that builds confidence. The way that you look directly affects the way that you feel and the way that other people treat you. So understanding those rules and being able to take some control over all of that is incredibly valuable. It's an educational curve. And what do we do on these channels? We like to educate you while entertaining you, which honestly is why I think this channel is so important for us to launch. There are so many lies and half-truths in the fashion industry that there needs to be someone out there to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and this is what science says. Also, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fun because talking about fashion is weird. Like, this channel has already given me the excuse to bludgeon a ballistic head to death using a high heel.
Always something loud.
It's also the channel where we're gonna physically be testing the viability of female armor, or how many t-shirts it takes to stop a bullet. There's also practical everyday stuff too.
Probably a decent amount.
Actually benefit the students? Does it make a difference whether or not you wash your legs in the shower? That's the sort of stuff that you can find on this new channel.
I mean, you probably should.
There are 5 new episodes that you can check out right after you finish this beast of an upload.
100,000
I personally recommend starting with the Killer Heel episode because this episode's all about the birth of a killer. And while you're over there,
you mean like stilettos because they're
it'll do all of us over here
like
a huge favor. Because if we manage to get a million subscribers by the end of the month, it'll put us as a top
it can probably kill people. Probably can kill someone.
Looking smart can be even better.
The world's most dangerous
so go ahead,
shoe.
Enjoy your all-day
Most people who wear
marathon.
stilettos though aren't that flexible.
It's time to complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2.
I didn't even realize that the goddamn controller thing changed, but the Afton era.
Business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running. Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Correct.
Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit, and fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these 2 men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot.
Sounds like a horrible idea.
Kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend
Like,
Fredbear.
that's not an invasion of privacy,
but since
or
cameras
completely
just weren't enough
illegal.
to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael.
Oh, that
There
guy.
was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter.
Michael doesn't like
He tormented his younger brother by jump scaring him with a foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday.
That's
he and his
even
friends would take his
worse.
scared little brother and make him do the one thing that
He
he was
already has
terrified
no
of doing,
friends.
getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped
It's so
shut.
fun.
The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements, and they'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp, but it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny.
It's just
The
a
boy was
prank,
taken to the hospital
bro.
and was
It was
immediately
so
given an IV.
funny.
Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his
funny
hospital
at the
bed.
time.
The damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, William's son would live again. It'd just take time. Time that right now he just didn't have. His young son's heart flattened.
Guarantee
The
he
boy
had
faded
that
into
moment.
The inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael.
That just reminds me of like the moon from Security Breach.
Fredbear's spring lock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took took his life. The suit's
That's
three-toed
harsh.
feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite.
Oh.
He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to
I never assumed that
to
Junior's was a
to
bar.
reflect and stew on
But
how
it
Henry
could have
had
been.
stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his
That's
character
a good
out of the
idea.
cartoon
That's a good
when
thought.
everyone else was there.
Never
How
would've thought
Henry
that.
had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part that failed after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. A beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. And it felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of
I don't have a
pure,
knife with me. I
unapologetic
just have a
evil.
hairbrush.
He would make
So,
Henry hurt
yeah.
like he hurts.
I just have a hairbrush.
And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove
Whoop.
home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime.
Random
In the
act
weeks
of
that followed,
violence.
Fredbear's
Sorry.
family
Random
diner
act of
would close
violence
for
is
good.
not a
Two
murder.
high-profile
It's like throwing a
deaths
rock
around the
at
restaurant
someone.
with two grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location, and there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly
Damn it, I
faded.
keep hitting the
Afton kept a
microphone.
low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering and even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him, all for him.
Dun, dun.
But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this
You
work
don't
with
play
Henry
as the
had gotten
crying
Afton to start
child in
learning
FNAF
more about
4.
life, robots,
You play
the
as
human mind, and
Michael
what a fallible
Afton.
machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth, plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son
Be like,
Michael in the house
you know
where he
what? I don't
belonged.
need
Was
that
it
glass of
extreme?
water.
Maybe. But then again, this was
I
the
go back to
boy
bed.
who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent
To
husband.
be honest, I kind of like that out of the FNAF story. The thing that makes it so terrifying is how it originated in the one room where all you had was you were on the defense. You could not escape. But not only that, but the sound quality and like what you heard, that is what you were most afraid of. Like, you never knew. You were like so closed off in your little space. It didn't matter if you were in your own actual room. You felt like you were actually in the game. The sound can amplify your own emotions, your own feelings well in a game. That's what some people don't understand. But that's like the best part. Soundtrack. Understanding what's around you, your senses. If you target that, you have a good game. So why not improve? No. Why not Why not I'm not gonna use amplify twice. Why not just to say improve. Why not improve on the sound more in the future? Like, bring it back to, like, that's what made you so afraid in the first game and the continuation of the games. Why not make that its own thing? Sound illusion discs. Sound. I might sound like crazy, just a crazy man on the internet, but I know you understand.
Leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her
That's
repeated
quite
demands
cynical.
that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no
Move
choice
on.
but to leave.
You burned down my house.
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's
I
this? I'm
knew.
using the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was
I
one
knew
lingering
that had
feeling.
something to
William
do
wasn't done. He
with
had gotten a taste of what it
William.
felt like to be unleashed. What it felt
Vampire
like
in
to
a
be
purple
free.
suit.
Charlie's
Come on.
murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985. Putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking.
Check a hairbrush.
First, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog
Hairbrush.
had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the
Hairbrush.
first. You never truly forget your first.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never leave the building.
Who would
They had to be
ever
stuffed
dare
to
look
inside of
in the
suits.
suit?
No one maintained those things anyway, except
I mean,
for
I
him.
wouldn't.
And so Susie would go into
Like,
Chica.
who looks
Fritz,
inside a
Jeremy,
Chuck
and
E. Cheese
Gabriel
suit?
would come next, but it was easy. It was too
This is why they
easy.
don't.
And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far. That one he shouldn't have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage.
Imagine being the one that
long-forgotten
got, like,
yellow Fredbear, now
steamrolled.
broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was
It's
broken.
like killing someone with a
Newspapers reported on
pickaxe.
this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing
And then you're just
children's
like,
incident. Police would even charge William with
bones
the crimes after
broken.
finding security footage of the
You're
golden
out.
mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had
True,
been hidden behind
that
the
didn't
mascot
make a lot
suit
of
the entire
sense.
time. What they had was circumstantial at
Like in the
best,
pit.
so he walked away a free man.
The pit.
But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again, so he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics.
I will
toy
save them.
animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys,
Soldering
these were
iron.
special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once
Push
more.
'em.
The
Push
year
'em
was
over there.
1987, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the
They made
attention of
Chica
William
sexy
Afton.
now.
Freddy's was
The internet's
back
not gonna go
without
crazy over
him.
that design.
That was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying
Jack
to
said
cut
that.
him out of the picture. No. As long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply, call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would
As
least
Jeremy.
suspect him, a lowly day shift security
Or was he
guard.
Mike?
And there it was, buried in the back of parts and
I don't remember
services,
what his
mixed
name
in
was.
with the old withered animatronics was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous
I never thought that he would be the one that used it.
May move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back.
Oh, okay, so he wore the suit. All of them were acting up. He got moved to the day shift. It literally says, so we're gonna move you to the day shift. You survive another night. Because it just became available. I wonder how it became available.
Back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in
I will
William's
be
mind.
there
He had seen
for
something
years,
strange. The old
decades,
withered animatronics. They
centuries,
had been wandering around the
millennia,
building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like
I am
those
your
old
worst
robots were trying to save
nightmare.
the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life
You
somehow.
can't.
Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard
Sorry,
getting
you
bitten by one of the
can't.
animatronics during the day
Yeah, you
shift. Was that
couldn't
bite
see
meant
that.
for
It's
him?
crop.
William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations, Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as 2 special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind, Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed, until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
It was a
The
truly
day before
sad
Circus Baby's
day.
Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time
I imagine
found her, it was too
Afton,
late.
like,
He
walking
was
through the
gone.
door
He
as it
immediately
happened. He
canceled
was
the launch
like,
of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas
no!
leak. As he sat there at the foot of the
'Cause, you know,
stage,
he said
noticed
that last
something was
time.
different.
Or
eye
the
color of
chomp.
the robot had changed.
No!
Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now
So
they
many-
were emerald green.
so many
Same
no's.
color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving
But
animatronics
how?
that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started.
Agony.
1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but William's damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death.
Henry's
They
still
hadn't been
alive
washed
at this
in
point,
decades. But even
though.
if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old, broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But he had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes.
I hope you die in a fire.
Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons
you get taken apart.
Puddle of goo. Could he transfer
this is what you desire.
He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly,
the goo
came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it. He had unlocked the secret to life itself.
It's alive.
Something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected.
Darth
this
Vader
was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic.
Yeah,
Perhaps
I've done that.
mixing the souls
I've done that too
and
many
portioning
times.
them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door, and Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death.
How do you stop something that is unstoppable?
He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge.
However,
snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain.
It's hard to do with the hat on.
Metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor.
It was
around
far
him.
too.
It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished.
It was
Unable
far
to move,
too
his
damn.
only option was to survive,
I love that.
to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him.
I was
a security
just
guard making a normal report.
too.
When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage, and who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him,
and
to
he
get
wouldn't.
him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered
But
the secret room.
did he resemble
His eyes
him?
fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing,
did you
turned
remember
and
him?
walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one. Nothing is being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die. End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and reestablished time and time again by the games. That said, there are 2 things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of Sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in games seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka
You know
Afton
what
speaking
you
through a
did,
walkie-talkie
Matt
into
Pat.
Fredbear plushie's
You know
stomach.
what you
But
did.
what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs,
Right.
just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton
Wait, so you're
wants him
saying-
scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics.
You're saying there's gonna be 3 episodes at the beginning, but that's going to be episode 1, episode 2, part 1, episode 2, part 2, and then episode 3. This is like the goddamn Attack on Titan timeline. Like, jeez. Are you serious? Ruining my master plan that I did not think of at all, but it is here? You know what? And nah, you know what? It's fine. I'm still gonna watch the next one. You know what? Or should I? Probably should, because that's gonna be the final part to this one, so it makes sense for the continuation. You know what? I will.
Doesn't want them getting too close because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work. Hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria,
I'm kind of just hoping right now that
either the 5 becoming
the
one
third
starts
part
in
of this is 2
but
parts
then
too.
Finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile.
I usually watch
he's
these
had
2
himself some
episodes at a
reason
time.
to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap.
Yeah, but it's not
put it that way, something tells me that this might
It's
balloon
part
to 4
1 of a
parts.
chapter.
Ugh, we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, until then, my Faz heads, congratulations.
You know
You've
what?
made it through a massive
okay.
upload. And hey, if you are still looking for more to watch, then check out the other 5 brand new awesome theories over on our new sister location Style Theory.
Do you
this
continue?
Thing literally
Does he
launched
continue to say
today, so this
anything
is your chance
besides-
to be one of the first people to ever subscribe to this brand new theory channel.
Wait, what's he
Get
say?
yourself the bragging rights of being there on day 1 and subscribing. I recommend checking out the video on Killer Heels. I think that one's the best starting spot, and then you just
And it's always a theory. It's always a game theory, as we all know. Okay. That came out 3 weeks ago. This one I didn't plan on doing, but why not? It came out 10 minutes ago. Well, 10 minutes ago, whenever that was ago. Let's reload the page just to see how far ago it was. An hour ago. Okay. So this is, and now it's at 71K. Okay. Thumbs up animation. Now I'm just hoping that the last part is 2 videos or a really long one. No, it's probably not. The really long one is like 26 minutes. Game theory, FNAF, burn them all, ultimate timeline. I think he ran out of words. I think that's why he doesn't add part to it. Like, because he ran out. You're only allowed 100 words if you didn't know. Nevertheless, did I exit out of that one? Yeah, I did. Okay. Let's start. 3, 2, 1. Burn them all. Play.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory and page 20 of our final FNAF
Holy
timeline.
shit.
This is getting ridiculous. Last time we
That
covered
is one
William
big
Afton's
Word
rise
document.
as a serial killer, how the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drinks. One night in a fit of rage, he lashes out against Henry's young daughter Charlie, his first murder. This moment becomes the first domino to fall in a long sequence of events that ultimately destroys William's life and the lives of those around him. That one murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to Remnant and the potential solution for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices, robots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation and collection of more remnants. remnant. Except there was one thing that he didn't account for: his daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children to put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What
Remember,
he didn't
don't
account
overshoot
for, though,
your
were
shot.
the ghosts, forcing him to pay for the sins of his past. When last we
very
left him,
poor
William
wisdom.
was spring-locked, bleeding to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video.
40
Today, we're finishing up
years later.
Chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton
Yes.
era. Over the next 6 pages, we switch our focus to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the
Kinda made
fallout of
everything I
stupid
said at the
childhood
beginning of the
decisions and
episode
tragic consequences.
redundant,
A young man whose
but you
life
know
is
what?
best described
It's okay.
as collateral damage, caught in the blast radius of William's whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just rip off the band-aid now. We won't be finishing the timeline today. I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to, but covering FNAF VR, AR, and security
It's okay.
breach wound up taking me an additional 9 pages of script. And I've already made you wait long enough for this part, so I just had to make the
Out the
executive
window.
call to break this one up into 2. Don't worry,
There it
that part
goes.
is already written. It is already recorded. It is just in the process of being edited. It is a hefty episode. So mark it on your calendar. That one's actually going to be going live on March 25th.
And it's
also
my
coming
editing
complete with
face.
a live talk back where we go back over everything from the past couple episodes, as well as having ourselves some very special guests. So overall, that one should be a lot
Like
of fun.
Markiplier,
Fair
Daco,
warning, though, the
Fnaf?
conclusions we've reached
Probably not
that solve
Markiplier. He's
security
not much of a
breach,
lore
they're
guy.
Controversial. I feel good about them. Like, I think that we've locked in on a lot of answers here,
Fnaf.
but they're gonna raise a lot of discussion. Let's just say that you're either gonna love that episode or hate it. I don't really think there's gonna be much in between.
I'll
on
love
that
it either
one.
way.
Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike. William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the 2 of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty set of shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. He never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father. It's not gonna lie, this ultimate, timeline, not just this, but the fact that there are a lot of stories in the Fazbear Fright books and, mainly the Fazbear Fright books, that don't really matter that much. It does help a little bit. They add a little bit to it, but there's always one that is super important out of the 3 per book. Remember that. That's wisdom. We'll play it again.
But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be.
The shelf
Is it a
swung
suit?
open and revealed a giant industrial elevator.
Oh,
One that led
no.
straight down
It's that.
into an underground bunker.
Yeah.
But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet, here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he
You don't know
grown
what's
up
in my
lost
basement.
his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father.
You know what I say? If you don't have an underground bunker in your house for whatever the reason, even if it's as big as a football stadium, something's wrong with you. Something's up with you. Not me. I mean, don't ask what I keep down there, but
Prideful, sad, angry man with petty everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with a stranger this entire time. His father had
Liar.
Suddenly the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here though? Was this Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his
I also feel like father would not be the type to go into full detail about how baby... I'm not gonna... Wait. Yeah, actually, quote-unquote died. Yeah, I can actually do it that time. I usually mess that up all the time. Quote-unquote died. Because he wouldn't, because he's Afton. So he knows.
The entrance he had found was some sort of
Michael
secret
knows
back way into the
nothing.
facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here
Till it
in
got
secret.
worn like a skin
And that's
suit.
when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby, his father's pride and joy. Except something was different about her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Will you help me?
Was this his sister?
She does sound like
baby
someone
girl? But how?
I know.
Why? What was this place? He dug around some old files and found blueprints outlining the features of these animatronics. Storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on
She's
kids?
just
Were all the
somebody that
rumors
I
he'd
used
heard
to
throughout
know.
His past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his
I don't know what I'm
father
doing
had
right now.
somehow been the prime suspect in all of it. Suddenly, Michael's mind flashed back to his persistent nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father.
He's
he was
a monster.
toying
Oh,
with
hell
life
yeah, he
itself.
actually said it.
Suddenly, everything clicked.
That was
He
awesome.
frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him.
How did I know he
Green
was gonna
eyes,
say
his
that?
sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost.
Gregory.
Small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context.
Hello in there. Is it the same person?
Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No,
It's like what
he
I do.
had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside.
They're my
There's
family.
nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
I have to be their hero.
You are in the scooping room now. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper? That violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints. Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could infuse new bodies with a soul. William could finally give and take away life. The only thing he needed were the bodies. But William wasn't the only one
Like he
looking for
woke up one
bodies,
morning
as
like-
Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him, another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not.
For the next several
I
months,
am
Michael's life
not
was not his own.
me.
He was forced to comply with the tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst as day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse, alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point, the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood.
Agony.
He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way, no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift. And all these old, shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings. And yet no one ever really wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike.
True.
One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in his security logbook. While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed new recruits to their
at
summer
one point.
jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now, there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body.
One made of remnant and another made of
To lash out
agony.
at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts, and each time at the end of his week shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still existed inside seemed like a winning strategy. All this revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares.
We believed.
Hallucinations that brought him back to his childhood.
That's better.
The guilt around killing his brother. His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, a new horror attraction inspired by the awful crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's
That's
Pizza
this
so many
year.
years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or
Not
entertainment.
cool, man.
Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally. Finally, this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of tragedy. Mike applied for the job and was immediately handed the keys.
That could
Years of
explain
doing
why
this taught him that security
Springtrap
guards
doesn't like
rarely
jump
receive
scare you
thorough
the same
security
way
checks. They also liked how creepy Mike
he does.
was. They thought it was
Everyone
us,
thought that was
on
weird.
theme for the job.
However,
Little they knew.
allure. That's why he just goes up and looks at you instead of
For
actually
weeks,
going
there
like,
was
"Ooh."
nothing. But just as Mike considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting
Makes
for
sense.
years.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him? Sure enough, there he was. William inside his iconic
Dear old
golden
dad.
Bonnie Springlock suit. Only now it was green and decaying with age. And there they were, a small family of broken men finally reunited. It's been a long time, Dad. Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria, suddenly sprang to life. Their burned faces haunting him as he tried to keep track of his father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else, but there was one that felt different from the others, one that was more than just a mere phantom, the security puppet. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the halls. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground. It would seem like he wasn't the only one
How does
there
a
on a
phantom
mission.
have
While
a
he was dealing with
reflection?
Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames. It is finished.
It would have been cool if since
Except
Springtrap
it was
escaped,
not. Somehow,
if the puppet
through sheer
did
force of
too.
will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father. Luckily, the solution.
Oh wait,
would present itself later.
never mind. Okay, the puppet did survive. But then got burned in the other one, which is weird because the puppet is like the all-around good guy. I don't understand why the puppet dies, but then again, or like it's burned. But then again, it's like, FNAF never has really a happy ending. It'd be so cool to see the puppet be brought back in some way or form. It would be kind of confusing to the lore, but if like it's nice to think that if William Afton can survive, then the puppet does too. Like how if Cassidy is to survive, if William survives, Cassidy does too. Tell me your thoughts about that. Like, would you want to see the puppet in like, because technically William Afton dies, and it's just code, so it'd be weird if the puppet did come back. But what if the puppet came back as code in some way? I know it's really weird and speculation. Maybe it's just me being super biased and loving the puppet so much, but you know what? I don't care. I like it.
Later that year, not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, restaurant ownership and management, something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success.
Sometimes I have these weird ideas and realize that that can't happen because
closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit and a wall.
I know less about the lore than you think.
The franchise back was Henry.
No lore.
The franchise around the time of his father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike,
this video isn't about the lore.
For a franchise and
it's
immediately
about
got the job.
The
there was
story.
just one thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison, a containment vessel, a locked box meant to trap them all in so they could finally end the madness. It took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man that had once gotten her killed. It was time. He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he didn't move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you, my
Inner
brave volunteer,
peace.
who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits.
I have to stop you right there, Henry, for some reason. Okay. Comment time. Alright, so, everybody, do you personally feel like the FNAF story should have ended at FNAF 6? Like, that should have just been the end of it. No lore, no anything, nothing came after, and that was just the end. Or do you feel like you actually enjoy the present future ones that have been made? Because, like, all my friends, or at least most of my friends, on my friend group, consider, like, all the FNAFs, it shouldn't have gone on. It should have ended, or at least one of my main friends considers that it should have ended at 6, and then it would have been a great game. But since like the lore is so compiled into this bundle of garbage, or not, I wouldn't call it that, but that's what probably he would say, like, of just basically all bundled together in this huge clump. That's a better word. You'd think that it's just overcomplicated and like lore can't build a game. And another one of my friends always looks at it as the lore doesn't matter, it's the game. But the lore is what makes the game. It's what it builds on. And I know how lore can be kind of pedantic, I guess is the word at times. I hope I didn't use that wrong. Or confusing, and doesn't at all really make that much sense. But at the same time, it's good for those specific reasons. Like, you want something to continue and grow because it's just that good. which you could say the same thing like in the SpongeBob franchise, where all the Groot episodes were for season 1 to 3, and then all the ones after were slightly worse or not as good. And they're afraid that's going to happen to the FNAF franchise. And even if it does, I'm going to still be here. I'm going to still watch these videos. I'm going to still be playing the games because it doesn't matter what they do with it. Maybe I'm just too much of an optimist, and I just feel like any video game is a good video game if you have fun playing it, or you understand the stuff that happens in it. But I just feel like it was good. I feel like they believe that it's a little played out. The FNAF William Afton always comes back, but like whenever a door, you have to think like whenever a door closes, another one opens. If you think like that in a glass half full type of way, then you open so many more gateways to the future. And maybe I'm just not as glass half empty as others may be. But that's just how I feel. And a lot of you, most of you, are going to be watching this and be thinking, what the fuck is that guy talking about? Which is kind of how I feel whenever I get into these deep dives, or really any video that I make, and I actually open my mouth and say something, because I'm not just some dude that watches the video and goes, yeah. And I am weird and I act out the scenes sometimes because it's fun, and I just do it just because. But you know what? That's what makes me unique. That's what makes me special. Let's get back into the video. 'Cause I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
And with that, it was over. The Afton legacy died, with all of them trapped inside of a literal box. As the flames danced around the office, Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. But William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone would
Seeing a withered lefty would have been a cool idea.
allow him to move
concept.
on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments from his past. The pizzeria, his son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place?
I
How did it
refuse
get here? He called out into the silence.
to let you run.
Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop. Make it stop. William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture.
I will tear
Just
you
as it felt
apart
like he couldn't take it
and
anymore.
put you back
Everything was
together
right.
all over
As
again.
if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them, a group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to
They
go wrong
started
once they
spitting the
should have.
facts.
Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could...
Well, honestly, believe it or not, those are the ones. It's kind of clever that those mediocre melodies in the Ultimate Custom Night are kind of the easiest to stop. I'd say that they're the easiest because you just have to sound cue and they'll just go away. You have to kind of like purposefully let yourself get caught by them if you're really good at it. But I'm really bad, so I would just get caught by them all the time.
could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where?
Greetings from the fire, and from the one you should not have killed.
The one he shouldn't have killed. William thought back. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder, no. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were back, and now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he'd made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite. Each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed
What
the
if
remnant
you
that was coursing through his
lose?
being, Cassidy kept
What if
William breathing,
I
paving the
win?
way for his escape.
What if you
William's will
don't
was
make
so
it?
strong. His soul
It's
so
all
powerful
just
that he
in
managed
my
to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-lock suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free. A person that no
Hey,
one
what's
would
this?
suspect. Okay, so a bit of a shorter chunk,
Plug
but
it
an
into the
important one as we shift perspectives
good
to
old
Mike and tell his
circuit
side of
board.
the story. And with FNAF VR, AR, and
No,
Security Breach having so much
don't
to explain, I didn't
don't
want to
touch
rush through
that
things by trying to cram it all in here. Don't worry,
USB
I know
stick.
you've all been patient. The final video is happening on March 25th. That is locked. It is getting ready to go. Trust me.
Bro, how hilarious would it be if that's how it is like defeated? He's got like the you know the trope in the movies, where it's on the kill code on the USB stick, and like in the Ruin DLC, you gotta just like jam it into his head, or just like plug it into anything, and you have the kill code on the USB stick that the character managed to hold like this in like without any grip, and then just smack, it's gone. It's gone. And then we have to go through a whole 30-minute action sequence to get it back, and then you plug it in, and Afton's like, no, again, because this is the third time saying it. It's kind of his trope now. He's gone like Tracer from Overwatch when you rip off her backpack. Just bloop, he's gone. Yep, victory, and everyone do the cabbage patch. Yep, that is my theory of how Ruin will go. If that's actually what happens, I am going to jump out my window.
I want this thing to be over and done with as much as you. I am not just stretching it out for the views. But before we wrap up for the day, I did want to talk about the big Orville elephant in the room, Mike's quest for revenge. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's a good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively, get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and odor. So weird connection between the two of them, right? But now, look at the phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 3. They use models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, meaning whoever is sitting in that security guard chair, Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. Yeah. And that's not all. Their designs are burnt. It's a weird detail in the game, and it's something that the character encyclopedia repeatedly calls attention to. The burned texture for these phantom animatronics.
The character encyclopedia, I never imagined it would loop together so much.
Burning down. From that point on in the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and are suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just moved or repurposed in some way. So when did they burn? And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and Sister Location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from Night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawings in the security logbook. So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael. Some tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm.
He has one for William, but
in short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative. Mike
to leave it up to
speculation.
That's how they do it.
Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is looking to make things right across the rest of the games. In Sister Location, he learns what his father's been up to and realizes what he has to do to correct it. After failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF 6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is just one problem: timing. Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to Sister Location, seen Baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. It's also when he's gonna start to smell.
Time
he's
is
a
just
walking, talking, rotting corpse, and we know that
an
he's not going
abstract
down into
thought.
the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have
Time
been
is
made,
an
Freddy's
illusion.
been closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post 1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're already deconstructed? But more importantly, we see FNAF 2 paychecks with the date 1987. That is way earlier than I think it can be. To be fair, Fritz Smith's pink slip on night 7 doesn't have a date, but it's a bit weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987 and then employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Anyway, just wanted to call that out because I don't have a solid answer for it, and I'd love to see your comments down
made
below.
a mistake,
and with that, my friends,
and it
this
was
chapter
not
comes to a close. We'll see you on
Matthew
March
Patrick.
25th for the grand finale as we cover the final 3 games in the franchise and the controversial answers we think
you
solves
just
what those
had
games
to
are
do
trying
this
tell
to me,
us.
didn't
Until
ya?
then, my Faz heads, remember, even though Afton kinda succeeded in being brought back to life, gotta admit, he's still looking a little bit on the dry, dehydrated side. I suppose 3 fires and being dead for a decade will tend to do that to ya. Fortunately, thanks to today's sponsor,
No,
Air
I'll
Up,
just
I think
say
we
it
can
right
help
now
out
while
with
he's
this
doing
hydration
his good
thing,
old
not the whole burning alive thing.
Air
You guys
Up or
know that I
whatever.
hate drinking plain water. It's just boring. And that then led me to my current crippling Diet Coke addiction.
Okay, so we all know what Air Up is. So, just to make this original or whatever, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I'm going to explain what Air Up is. Okay, so imagine that you have your water bottle, right? Okay, so Air Up is like a metal water bottle, a metal water bottle, sorry, I was away from the microphone, that I do not have in my bedroom. So imagine you have a water bottle and you clip on your thing and it smells like oranges. Makes this taste like this because of how you smell, because your sense of smell is stronger than your sense of taste. Don't quote me on that. So that's what Air Up is. It basically allows you to smell, think, and then your brain is tricked into believing that you're tasting something that tastes like this when you're really tasting water, which is kind of a revolutionary idea to make everybody on the planet just drink water if it wasn't so expensive. And I am saying this without actually knowing the price, but believing that it is quite expensive. I'm believing that it is maybe like $30 for that water bottle, or maybe it's like $20, and then you always have to change the clips, and the clips only work once, I think, unless you you drink a lot of water in the time span of like an hour. Nevertheless, it's not a scam. I don't believe that it's a scam. But I know next to nothing about it, but that is because I heard this ad before on something else, and he doesn't have to explain it. He's done enough work with all these theories, so I would explain it for him. You are welcome, Matt. Nevertheless, I guess I'll see you all on March 25th. I'm going to skip through all of these to see if he says anything else important right now. I don't think he's saying much. Oh, they have other flavors. They have vanilla ice cream flavors? Okay, I might want to try this. I'm not gonna lie. It does seem amazing. I do not know of what the link is. It's probably in the description. So I'm gonna check that out. I don't know if I'm gonna be making new gameplay videos, but there'll definitely be new reactions up throughout the week. I'm off on spring break, and I might just upload them all on the same day, or maybe not. Whenever I get through to actually making the stuff, I mean editing the stuff, that's what I mean. This has already been an hour and 30 minutes, so I hope you enjoy. I'm going to look at this Air Up. Wait, where is it? Score your free favorite 5 variety pack with each starter set. Order with code 3faves. 3fave5. Oh, yeah, it's the five things, I think. Nevertheless. Okay, that's enough of off video things that don't need to be in the video but are in the video for some reason. But yeah, I will see you next time, and as always, I am the anthropomorphic nerd, and can't wait till Ruin comes out. Honestly, one final thing. What do you think is gonna come out first, Ruin or the FNAF movie? Because I think they made the. What if they just made the FNAF movie so that it bought more time for Ruin? Because a lot of people didn't like the FNAF security breach. I'm not one of those people, but my cat just woke up and she's gonna probably want to deal it out of my room. So yeah, I gotta go. I'm at the protected. You know my name and everything about me, and pretty much this is my room life. Oh, see ya. I missed the button.